We started this compost bin earlier this year and it's not composting as quickly as we'd hoped.
We have made a few mistakes along the way that have hindered the process, but gardening is all about learning. And today we'll share with you all the mistakes that we've made so that you don't have to.
Probably the biggest mistake we made was starting our compost bin in winter. Now don't get me wrong, you can start a compost pile at any time of year. The issue is more what you have available to put in. And in winter you generally have more brown materials than green. Basically we should have collected brown materials in winter and held on to them until spring when we would have had more green materials to add. But we couldn't wait to get started. We should have been a little bit more patient. You see, a healthy compost pile needs a balance of carbon-rich browns and nitrogen-rich greens. Too many browns like dead leaves or woody cuttings and not enough green such as kitchen scraps or grass means the decomposition process will be slower. We realised something was off when the compost didn't heat up properly. It should be warming up to around 55 degrees to 70 degrees Celsius, which helps kills off any nasties and gets the process going. A cold compost heap is usually a sign that it's missing nitrogen from those green materials. Oh, and then the ants showed up. Ants aren't the end of the world, and you can expect to see some during the process, but it's also a red flag early on. Usually means the pile's too dry and too brown heavy, which ours was. It's not a lost cause though, won't have to start again or anything daft like that. It's just taken a bit longer than we'd hoped. Now we're into spring and we've got loads of green waste knocking around from weeding, pruning, mowing and cutting back shrubs, and we're mixing them in to get the balance right and help heat things up again.
A bunch of you mentioned this in the comments on our last compost video, and it got us thinking. When we started this compost heap, we didn't add any water and it was a bit dry. This was made worse by the lack of greens we had on hand. Compost does need moisture to break down properly, but it doesn't want to be soaking wet, more like a damp, wrung-out sponge. If it's too dry, composition slows to a crawl, and if it's too wet, it can turn into a slimy mess and start to smell. Keeping the compost damp is really important because the tiny organisms that break everything down need moisture to stay alive and keep working. If it's too dry, they slow down or stop completely. A dry compost pile will look dry and crumbly. You might notice that it's not breaking down as quickly as it should. Now, if you live in a hot climate where the heap will tend to dry out more readily, then it could be worth adding some water in between the layers as you're building the heap. In our temperate climate, we shouldn't really have to do this, especially if you're building a balanced heap. It's much better to be slightly too dry than too wet. If your compost is too wet, it can start to go anaerobic. That's just a fancy word for lacking oxygen. Just mix in some more dry stuff like shredded cardboard or dry leaves to balance it out. The key is to check it often and adjust as needed.
Here's a really simple mistake we made early on. It's probably why our compost still looks like a pile of garden waste rather than the crumbly soft compost we had in mind. It all comes down to the size of materials we added. We knew that bigger pieces would take longer to break down, but we definitely underestimated just how small things need to be to compost properly. Cutting your materials into smaller bits really helps everything break down faster. Also makes for a more even, consistent compost that's easier to use in your garden. With garden waste, especially woody stems, prunings or even thick sunflower stalks, a quick pass with the lawnmower can work wonders. Just lay everything out on the lawn and give it a mow. If you don't have a mower, then you'll need to get the garden shears out and snip things up by hand. It's a bit of a chore, but your compost will thank you. Even food scraps have been slower to break down than we expected. Things like avocado skins, eggshells and vegetable peelings have all been hanging around longer than we'd like. So now we chop everything up with a knife or even give it a quick blitz in the food processor before adding it in. It's one of those small steps that makes a big difference, and we wish we'd done it from day one.
So back in January when we started our heap, greens were hard to find and we got a bit desperate. In our effort to include as many greens as possible, we grabbed whatever we could get our hands on. So we threw in a bunch of evergreens, like the ivy that we pulled off our pizza oven, and hedge trimmings. Evergreens like this tend to decompose quite slowly. A small amount is fine, but too much can throw off the balance of your pile. If you do want to compost evergreens, it's best to chop them into very small pieces and mix them with plenty of other greens and browns to make sure you're balancing the carbon to nitrogen ratio.
Earlier in the year, I noticed that our quite large lawn had developed a thick layer of thatch, the mossy straw-like stuff that builds up between the grass and the soil. A little thatch is normal, but too much creates a spongy surface that can actually stop your grass from growing properly. So I called in a professional to sort it out, and they ended up removing 20 full bin bags of thatch and moss, 20. And when I asked about composting it, they warned me not to. Apparently thatch and moss can take ages to break down, especially if you've got 20 bags worth to go in. And they said it was better off going in the green waste collection, so that's what we did. But since then, we've done a bit of Googling, and honestly, the advice out there is all over the place. Some people swear you can compost thatch and moss, especially if it's well mixed in with fresh greens and shredded browns. But others say it's not worth the hassle and clogs up the pile. So we're curious, have you tried it? Did it work? Let us know in the comments if you've had success composting thatch and moss. We'd love to hear what actually works in the real world.
Now you can absolutely compost grass clippings. They're packed with nitrogen, decompose quickly, and they generate a lot of heat. They seem to act like a compost accelerant, but we made the mistake of dumping them in all at once. Big clumps of grass turn slimy and heavy, stopping air from getting in. This slows down the composting process. Instead, spread grass clippings in thin layers and mix them with dry browns like leaves, straw, or shredded paper. This keeps the pile airy and helps everything to break down much more evenly. If you've got too much grass, try using some as mulch around your garden to help retain moisture and suppress weeds. Just spread it thin so it doesn't clump and create the same problems.
There's a farm and stables just around the corner from us, and on a Sunday walk a few weeks ago, we noticed they had piles of fresh manure bagged up outside for £2 a bag. Bargain, right? We thought we struck gold. Manure is known to give compost a real boost, so we grabbed a few bags thinking it would turbocharge the pile. Now the problem is, manure is only useful in compost if it's clean. And yeah, I get it, we're talking about poo, how clean can it be? But it's not about how it looks or smells, it's about what's in it. Some farms use weed killers or pesticides on their pastures, and those chemicals can pass right through the animals into the manure. Surprisingly, some of these chemicals can survive the composting process and linger in the finished compost for years. Even in tiny amounts, they can damage your plants, stunt growth, or stop seeds from germinating altogether. That's definitely not the kind of supercharged compost we were hoping for. So now, before we add any manure, we check the source. If it's not from an organic farm, or we can't confirm that the pasture hasn't been chemically treated, we don't use it. It's just not worth the risk. If you're buying manure for your compost, always ask where it came from, and when in doubt, skip it or go organic.
We're using the turn once method with this compost heap. It's not exactly a mistake, it's definitely less effort, but it does mean that you've got to get a little bit creative with airflow. The idea is simple. Instead of turning the pile regularly, you only turn it once, usually after a few months. It's less work, but without that regular mixing, air can struggle to reach the centre of the pile, and compost needs oxygen. Without it, things slow down and start to smell as anaerobic conditions take over. One way to fix this is to add a vertical pole right down the middle. Unfortunately, we didn't do that, but we wish we had. A pole creates a chimney effect, letting air reach the centre of the pile without needing to dig it over every week. It also helps keep the temperature and moisture levels more stable, giving the microbes a better environment to work in. Composting isn't an exact science. Things change. Moisture levels, smells, temperature, and if you're not checking in, it's easy to miss when something's off. A big mistake then is not checking your compost regularly. Keeping an eye on it helps spot problems so you can fix them. The pile becoming too dry, too compact, or too cold will slow down or even stop the process. By checking your compost regularly, you can catch and correct issues early. You can add water if it's too dry, mix in browns if it's too wet, or turn the pile to improve airflow. It also helps to keep pests like rats at bay. Compost piles are warm, damp and sheltered, which are absolutely perfect conditions for rats and mice. If left undisturbed, they might move in and start a little colony, but regular activity puts them off. Even just walking by and making a bit of noise can be enough to make them think twice.
One of the mistakes that everyone makes, including us, is being impatient. We've been at this for 4 months now and we're still not done, and that's totally normal. Composting takes time, so don't expect instant results. It's best to be patient and let nature do its work. The best thing you can do is to stop adding new stuff once the pile's nearly done. If it's shrunk down, smells earthy and the temperature's dropped, it's time to leave it to finish off. Start a new pile. Rushing the process can result in unfinished compost, which won't do your garden any favours.
Let us know in the comments if there are any other pitfalls we should avoid making. We'll keep you posted on how our compost is coming along, so make sure you subscribe.
And if you'd like to see the origin story of this very compost bin here, then make sure you click on the video on the screen now, and we'll see you there.